if I can get above a 510, I think anyone can get above a 510, to be honest. Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be talking about my MCAT experience, specifically how I made an 8-point jump within 1 month of extra studying from my first exam to my second exam. Also, FYI, I totally banged my laptop against my chair. So I also have my laptop in front of me, so if I am looking down during the video, I'm looking at the notes that I wrote up for you guys. So I'm just going to talk about book selection first. I think it's really important to find a good set of prep books that you can use. So the two most popular ones I would say are Kaplan and Princeton Review. I did the Kaplan books, but I know a lot of my other friends did the Princeton. Honestly, when it comes to exam scores, I don't think there's much of a difference between Kaplan versus Princeton. If you're into like color and diagrams and pictures more, then I would actually do Kaplan. I think their books are a lot more fun to read. They're more colorful. It's definitely not sponsored by them, but I chose Kaplan. And I thought it was really easy to follow along, even for some of the classes that I didn't take. For Princeton, I would say the people who usually go for the Princeton review books are people who need more help in cars. I heard they have a very good cars books to utilize, and also people who focus more on content and the actual text of the book. I heard Princeton review goes into a little bit more detail of every subject. The reason why I think that anyone could do it is because I feel like I was really behind. I didn't really know about the MCAT until the summer before the year that I had to take it. I honestly didn't even know it existed. So I wasn't actively preparing for it. My biochem class, which honestly I think is the most important class for the MCAT, it was really rushed, where we focused so much on the first half of the class that the last half of class was really rushed. So honestly, my professor spent the last week of lectures going over all the important stuff, such as the TCA cycle, glycolysis, carbs, fats/lipids. What else did we go over? Oh, we went over the electron transport chain. All of that was literally crammed into the last 3 days of lecture, which was really bad. So I had to teach myself all of that. And then I also did not take genetics before taking either of my MCATs, so that was a huge deficit. So honestly, if I can get above a 510, I think anyone can get above a 510. For the amount of studying I had, which was about 2.5 weeks, all I did during this time was I spent about 2 to 3 days studying each of the 6 subject books. All the 6 books aside from the cars books. I totally skipped cars. So I did that. I literally just read through it, and then I took 1 practice exam, and that was literally all of my studying, which was really bad. And I barely reviewed that practice exam because I was running out of time. It was literally the day before my real test when I had a chance to review it, and I spent half the day reviewing and the other half the day cramming more information. So honestly, it didn't go so well. But for my second exam, my score actually jumped 8 points, so about a 25 percentile jump, which honestly was insane. And all I had in between the first exam and the second exam was a month of studying. And honestly, if you only have 1 month of studying, I would literally just focus on this rather than doing what I did the first exam. I wouldn't even go page by page through all of the 6 subject books if that's all the time I had. Keep in mind that I am a slower studier and I didn't have a lot of preparation, especially with biochem and genetics. If you're someone who has all of that knowledge beforehand, I think honestly you can do it in 3 weeks. The first thing I would recommend doing is actually to understand the outline of the test. So understand the time limit. I know the time limit just recently changed for the shortened version of the MCAT if you're watching this during the COVID-19 period. I heard that the strategy is still the same in that you should aim for about less than 90 seconds per question. So just realize what your time limits are and then adjust your break times accordingly. Understand the number of sections. Oh, and then what you get to. So remember that you don't get a calculator, you get notepads to take notes on and what that's like. You get a periodic table, so be familiar with what type of periodic table you're getting. That shouldn't take so long, and honestly, you can probably understand the outline of the test by doing the first thing that I recommend. I'd recommend taking a practice exam to see where you are initially. The practice exams that I recommend for your first time are either Blueprint, which used to be called Next Up. I'll link all the resources below so that you can find everything. Not only does it have a very good representative MCAT exam for free, apparently now is a shortened MCAT exam. So if you are watching this during the COVID-19 period, you can practice what the shortened MCAT feels like with the Blueprint exam. So that's free, and I will link that below. So I took that during my first studying period for my first exam, and that score was literally the same score that I got on the real exam. So I think it's very representative. And the second one I recommend that you can take either as a second practice exam or a first practice exam, depending on how much time you have, is the AAMC MCAT Official Prep Sample Test. This one doesn't give you a score, but I will link you a spreadsheet that I use. It's honestly really neat because it helps you determine what your score would be based off of a whole bunch of data that people had input into the spreadsheet, and it also gives you a total predicted score, like a range of what your score will be on test day, and my range was pretty indicative. My score did fall within that range. After you take your first practice exam, the third thing I would do, so first was understand the outline exam, second was taking a first practice exam, which I guess you could do together. The third step that I would recommend is take 1 week to just do quick content review, or just to review the materials that you don't feel necessarily comfortable with. So a good strategy for this 1 week of content review is if you have the Kaplan quick notes. I don't know if Princeton Review has quick notes that's included in the bundle of prep books, but you can certainly find the Kaplan quick notes. I'll probably link it below too. If I forget it, someone comment below and then I'll make sure to add it. Go over each subject, and if you hit a bullet point or section where you're really confused, so for me that was literally all the biochem things. So if you hit any of these things that you are totally unaware of during the quick notes, then I would use your prep books as a guide instead of going through them, especially if you have 1 month left. I don't recommend going through page by page, because that alone will take you probably 2 to 3 weeks depending on how fast you work. So use the quick sheets as a cheat sheet, determine what you don't get, and then locate that section in your prep books, and then thoroughly review those materials in your prep book. And if you need to, you can use YouTube videos, you can use Khan Academy to accommodate those pages of the prep books further. And so that's what I would do during your 1 week of content review. Just focus on things you don't know. The fourth step that I recommend after doing the 1 week of content review is spend 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks of practice exams, practice questions, and section review in between. So I'll kind of go over what I mean by that. But I'll probably try to include a screenshot or screen recording of what I would recommend. I tried to separate each AAMC material and set of practice questions by day and week. But you can totally adjust this depending on what you actually need, and if you actually need all those extra review days in between. So I'm just gonna go over that right now. I'll probably link a Google Doc below so you guys can follow along too, or it'll be on the screen. So for the 2 to 3 weeks of practice exams and practice questions, I highly recommend, if you only have those 2 to 3 weeks, to only use the AAMC material. And why I say that is because AAMC, they're the company who makes the exam, so it's going to be most indicative of what's actually going to be on the test. And honestly, there are a couple questions that I remember being super similar from a practice exam that I took from the AAMC. I would say there are 3 types of practice question sets that the AAMC offers, at least from when I prepared for the exam. So first you have your practice exams. So these are full length, and they, except for the sample test that I mentioned in the beginning of the video, they'll give you a score at the end. They have the Q pack. Basically, this will help you learn the material very effectively. And then the last thing is the section banks. The section banks are kind of like the Q banks in that it gives you questions that helps you learn the material, but it also focuses a lot more on critical thinking and analyzing the passages. So I would say the section banks are probably going to be more representative of the newer MCATs. I heard that the MCAT has been trying to lean more towards critical thinking rather than straight up recall and memorization. So if you look at my study schedule, you'll see that I started with the Q packs, and the Q pack that I started with was biology, just because that's what I was more concerned about, just because I knew genetics would be a part of biology. So I would actually recommend starting with either a Q pack or a section bank subject that you're most concerned about, because I feel like most people are most motivated towards the beginning and the most thorough towards the beginning of their study schedule, and maybe towards the end too. I made it a strategy to where I would do biology in the beginning. So if you look at my study schedule, for all the Q packs that I did the entire Q pack. So biology had 2 volumes. So I did the first volume Q pack, and then I would review all of the questions to make sure I knew what things I got wrong, why they were wrong, and things like that. And if I saw anything during that exam that I didn't know, like if a question asked me about a specific concept and I didn't know it, then I made sure to review that. What I mean by reviewing is looking at the concepts that you get wrong, and not only do you read the explanation that they give you on why what you did was wrong and why the correct answer is the correct answer, but also go in your prep books and make sure you actually understand that specific concept and like everything that's closely related to that concept. So for example, if you had an amino acid question and you got the question wrong for some reason, not only do you have to review why that amino acid is wrong and why the correct one was correct, but also maybe review all the 20 amino acids just to make sure you understand them. So that kind of mentality of going back and reviewing the entire concepts and that entire topic. So yeah, for the Q packs, I'd recommend doing them and then reviewing all on the same day. For the section banks, the same thing. So take the section bank, give yourself a good break, maybe an hour or 2 of a break, and then review them in that same day if you can. So for the practice exams during your schedule, I would recommend taking the practice exam, and then that's it. Like the practice exam themselves are like 7 to 8 hours of your time. You're probably not want to do any more studying for the day. You probably shouldn't, because your brain's going to be completely fried. So I'd recommend doing the practice exams and just giving yourself the rest of the day as a break. I always enjoyed practice exam days because then I would just be completely done after the practice exam. The day after your practice exam, I would spend that whole day actually reviewing the practice exams. And again, reviewing as in going over all the questions and why you got them wrong, why you got them right, and then whatever concepts that you got wrong or you didn't understand, then I would go back to prep books, go back to YouTube or Khan Academy and make sure you actually understand that concept. It's a good way to do practice questions and review content all in one, and it'll save you a lot of time, and I think it's also very effective. The practice exams are pretty useful, and they were also representative. If I remember correctly, my practice exam scores were 510, 512, 513, and 516. So my score did fall within that range, so I think it is very indicative. Okay, so for psychology, I think there's only the psychology section bank, so there's not a Q bank. At least from what I remember, there wasn't a Q bank for psychology. So for that one, I'd recommend just keeping a Word document or a Google document open and typing every word every psychology word that you see in the section bank. So whether that be the actual answer for the question or the other answer choices, so like A, B, C, and D. AMC does not put those answer choices in for no reason. Like, it's not a coincidence that they put these terms in the answer bank. They're probably putting it there because whether or not it was the correct answer for your question, they want you to know those terms. So whatever term you see from the section bank or from all 4 of the practice exams that you took, I would put that into a Word document and make sure you actually know all those words. So that would be my recommendation, and also using the quick sheets for psychology. For the last day, if you need to travel somewhere, like to a different city, to your hotel, which is what I did, obviously do that first. Then I would review difficult / high yield / easy to forget / memorization type things. That was a lot of slashes. But basically things I'm talking about are the amino acids. Like, those are things that you just memorize, and you know it's high yield because you know you'll get an amino acid question most likely. The biochem cycles, a lot of people do acronyms, so making sure you remember the acronyms the day before the exam. Maybe review like physics equations the day before exam. Just basically things that are very memorization based and also high yield. And then prepare a meal, research what things are good for your body. The last thing is making sure you get a lot of sleep. I recommend actually sleeping 1 hour before your sleeping goal. So for me, my sleeping goal was 8 hours, but I ended up only getting 7 hours because I was so nervous and I couldn't fall asleep for a whole hour at least. So maybe I got like 6 or 7 hours. But if you allot that 1 hour extra to be nervous and in case you don't fall asleep, I think that would end up being good for you too. And then the last thing I'm gonna go over are basically optional / extra things that you can do if you have longer than the 2 or 3 weeks. I put some of them in the 3-week schedule in case you had longer than 2 weeks. Basically, the first thing is UWorld has a good free 100 questions. Those are free, and I really like the explanation, so I think that would be helpful. And then the second thing is adding extra content review days in between your Q packs and section banks, so just days where you solely do content review if you need extra content review if the 1 week wasn't enough. I hope that was somewhat organized, but I really hope you took something away from this video. And if you need any help or if you have any questions, just comment below. Remember that a test score does not determine how intelligent you are. Like me increasing by 25 percentile just by increasing my practice questions and focusing on practice questions just goes to show how this exam does not dictate your intelligence. It really just shows that you know the exam format and understand how to do the specific questions that the AMC puts together. Just honestly do your best and just realize that what you do will be enough, because medical schools will be able to see your determination, your drive, and your hard work through so much more than this test score. This test score is just one small indicator in like a big myriad of other elements.